Alrighty, how's everyone doing? Kalzain back with another video, and today we're going to talk about the Destiny 2 beta. Alright, so I want to get into a few things, and before I get this going, everything I'm about to talk about is subject to change when Destiny 2 finally comes out. So some of this probably won't be the way it is. I just want to talk about my speculation on things based on the beta and how things are playing out so far. So, now that we got that out of the way, alright, so I want to talk about the loot system going on in Destiny 2, how it differs from Destiny 1, and where I think this is a good thing and where I think it is a bad thing. So, we'll start with the good. And basically the way the loot system works now is completing activities will drop loot, which has been how it always is, but weapons will only have certain roles available. Now, as opposed to what I was anticipating, with just set perks and no ability to change, they do have minor tweaks you can make to them. So, in a way, you still have a little bit of customization, but it's very, very, very slim on your perks and abilities. Now, I think the way the trees are set up, it's a little bit limited on in your very first category, you'll see a white little symbol, and that symbol basically is what it's called the intrinsic perk, and this is like lightweight, things like that, and of that nature. So those will vary weapon to weapon, and apparently those can change up on the same weapon depending on what you get when it drops. So those can vary. Now you go to the next column over to the right, and you have the scopes, and usually there's 2 or 3 scopes available, or different muzzles available, and these change some of your stats like they would in Destiny 1. You get True Sight, IS, Sure Shot, things like that. And in that regard, if hand cannons work the same way in Destiny 2 that they do in Destiny 1, then you still want to go with Sure Shot and have that extra range, but it also makes a big knock to handling and stability. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out so far. I got to get a little bit more time with hand cannons and other weapon types, and I want to talk about those at the very end of the video. But then you go to the second column, and it looks like it's all magazine based. Different things for like your amount of ammo you can have in the chamber or in the magazine and stuff like that. So that's what's going to make up your second column, and then the third column is your basically your perks that basically make up like your things like hidden hand and ricochet rounds and stuff like that, skip rounds. Those kind of perks will fall in the last category, and from what I've seen, there's usually only one option. Some of them have a couple, but that's really what you're limited to. And I think that for starters, only having one perk like that, I think that's a good and bad thing. It's a good thing in the sense that they can basically split this up and make tons upon tons upon tons of weapons, which for this weapon system, that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have hundreds of weapons available. Otherwise, this is going to get really boring, really fast grinding for the weapons that you already have, with no chance of getting a different perk on them or things like that. So, some of that kind of stuff, like splitting it up that way is a good thing, and it's a bad thing because it really limits the usability of that particular weapon and makes you have to really focus on what the activity is, what kind of play style you're geared towards, as to what weapons you can use. And this isn't always a good thing, because with it being so limited, if they don't put enough weapons in the game, then it's going to leave people with either a couple weapons they're really comfortable with and a bunch they're not, or for really adaptive people, they're going to have too many weapons that are good for one scenario in an activity but not good for another. So with doing the new kinetic and energy slots, that kind of alleviates some of that, but they're still going to have a butt ton of weapons in order to keep this fresh. So that's good. That's the good and the bad on that system. And I want to talk about weapon usability, how the weapons handle, what's been effective and what hasn't been. And in that regard, pulse rifles, the 2 pulse rifles I've used, the Nightshade, and I can't remember what the other one is, the Omelan one and the Nightshade. One's a kinetic, one's an energy. Those pulse rifles are the most usable weapons in the beta so far. The hand cannons, the Better Devil, and I'm not really sure what the energy one was. They are borderline unusable to me. It seems like I'm really the range, or it seems like the damage drop off is severe, and it seems like the range just makes them almost worthless. They're definitely not in the same caliber they used to be. So the days of the hand cannon meta, if this all plays over into Destiny 2, may be done. So, but this is all subject to change, so take it with what you will. The auto rifles seem to do really well, and the scout rifles seem to really suffer in terms of damage output, because it seems like when I go to use the scout rifles, I'm getting outgunned by just about everything else except for hand cannons and sidearms. So, in terms of what's really, really usable, you're limited to really pulse rifles and auto rifles for the most part. The grenade launcher is really fun to play with, but really hard to get used to. The shotgun is a typical shotgun, and the sniper rifle is a typical sniper rifle. I haven't gotten any rocket launchers or anything like that, so... But in terms of the meta for the beta, you have pulse rifles, auto rifles, that's about it. That's useful. Submachine guns, the recoil on them is so severe, I can't even use them. Unless you are right on top of someone, they're about worthless, unless you've got a really, really steady shot. And that's pretty much all I got on in terms of that. Now, I want to get to the loot drop system, and this is something that, again, is subject to change, but I've noticed a lot of the same weapon dropping with the same intrinsic perk, and I haven't got a whole lot of new stuff, and this is starting to get to, it's taking the excitement out of the grind already. I'm hoping that it's not this way at the launch of Destiny 2, and I'd be willing to bet that it's not going to be. I think it's just because they have such a small pool of loot that's available through the beta, that it's really just limited on what you're going to get. So that's probably more to do with what's available in the beta, and not so much to do with, you know, how the game's going to progress going into Destiny 2. But I really hope that's not a sign, an omen of things to come, because I really don't think that with the way the weapons are set up now, if you have too many repeat weapons, you're not getting anything new. And if they don't have enough to cover, like enough weapons in the game to cover a large amount of time, people are going to get bored with this game super, super quick. So, this has just been my thoughts on some of the weapon stuff going on in the beta, and I want to talk, like, I guess I'll go into armor in this video, because I was going to do a separate video on it, but it's really brief. There's not a whole lot to talk about. But with the armor, you basically, when you go to inspect it, you have two sets of perks, or two perks available. You have one for either mobility, like they affect mobility, resilience, and recovery. And usually there's one that's like a really balanced option, and then one that's really heavy on either mobility, resilience, or recovery. So you can kind of tweak that a little bit if you want a little bit of extra armor, if you want a little bit more mobility. And that kind of stuff's up to you guys to play around with. But really, that's all that's going on with the armor. I'm hoping that in Destiny 2, like when the full game launches, there'll be a little bit more there to that system. That's going to affect grenade charges and things like that. Because the ability charge times are really, really slowed down. Again, these are all things that could be subject to change going into Destiny 2. But not getting your super till the end of a PvP match, and not having... Because I was in favor of nerfing the shoulder charge and melee strength and grenade strength when it seemed like... Because when I said it was okay to nerf that stuff and the damage output, it really was, considering they were way too powerful in Destiny 1. But nerfing them and increasing the charge, or the recharge time, it's a bit much. You don't get them very often. They don't do as much damage, and it made almost your abilities almost worthless in the Crucible. And I wanted it to be more balanced, but not so bad to the point where it was basically it's pointless. So again, this is something that'll probably go and change in Destiny 2, and I'm sure there's going to be armor that affects your recharge rate on those kind of things. But the way it stands, it's really slow going for abilities in the Crucible, which really puts the emphasis on gunplay, which is both good and bad. It's good because it really needed more focus on the gunplay, but at the same time, I think it's too slow to the point to where it gets a bit boring. Only being gunplay, it seems more like you're playing, I don't know, COD or something like that instead, in terms of if the way the game is set up. So I'd like to see them maybe, decrease that charge time just slightly so that way it charges a little bit faster. But I would like to see the supers be more available in either the middle of the match or slightly towards the end, but not like right at the very end like I've been getting them. So that's just my thoughts on that. And like I said, guys, this is all subject to change probably, and a lot of this probably will change. But this is just my speculation and things I've noticed through the betas so far. So, alright guys, if you liked the video, go ahead and hit that like button down below. Subscribe so you can stay up to date on everything I post going into Destiny 2. I will have more beta content coming up shortly. And until next time, guys, I will catch you all later, and I will see you in the next one.